We live in a world that demands our attention, our time, and our energy at every moment. The calls, the messages, the endless requests. Everyone wants a piece of you. But what if I told you that being available to everyone, all the time, is not only a recipe for personal destruction, but a denial of the higher calling on your life? What if I told you that by constantly saying yes to every person who asks for your time, you are saying no to the life that God has uniquely designed for you to live, that every moment you give away in service to others without discernment is a moment stolen from your purpose, your soul, and your God-given responsibilities? So, let me ask you a question that cuts to the heart of your very existence. Are you living in a way that honors the time and energy God has entrusted to you, or are you letting the endless demands of the world dictate your every move? The truth is this: you were not created to be a servant to every whim, every request, every expectation. You were created with a specific purpose, with a unique calling that requires focus, discipline, and yes, the ability to say no to the things that do not serve that higher purpose. If you do not learn to guard your time, to set boundaries, and to say no when necessary, you will miss the very reason you are on this earth. Today, I'm going to show you why you must stop being available to everyone, and why doing so is not a luxury, but a spiritual necessity. We all know the feeling when your phone buzzes, when your email inbox fills up, or when someone walks into your life with a demand, a need, a request. And without even thinking, you respond, you say yes, you show up, you give, over and over again. It feels like the right thing to do, doesn't it? After all, isn't helping others part of being a good person? Isn't it what we're supposed to do? But there's something insidious beneath this cycle of constant availability, and it's not just the obvious stress and exhaustion. It's the quiet erosion of something far more valuable than mere time, your soul. The reality is that constantly being available to everyone, all the time, is a recipe for personal destruction. You see, when you give without restraint, without discretion, you begin to lose yourself. You sacrifice your focus, your energy, your joy, and ultimately your ability to live with intention. You become like a vessel that never empties but also never refills. It's a dangerous thing to keep pouring out, with nothing coming in, with no time to replenish, no space to think, no opportunity to reflect. You may think that you're doing good, that you're serving others. And at first it might feel fulfilling, you feel needed, you feel important, but this is a fragile, fleeting satisfaction. It's the satisfaction of a moment, but it's built on a foundation of neglect for your own needs, your own health, your own calling. And over time, this foundation begins to crack. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You might think you're just handling a few demands here and there, responding to a message, helping out a friend, jumping into someone else's crisis. But the constant interruptions and distractions pull you further and further from the life you are meant to lead. You may be busy, but are you truly productive? You may be helpful, but are you really serving the right things? What happens when you are constantly available to everyone is that you slowly lose the ability to prioritize the important things. The very things that require your focused attention, the things that will bring lasting growth, peace, and fulfillment, are pushed aside. When you're running from one demand to the next, when your phone pings every few minutes with another request, your mind is scattered. You can't focus, you're never fully present, and slowly, without even realizing it, you lose touch with what truly matters. Your calling, your purpose, the things that give your life meaning. These are drowned out by the noise of endless demands. I want you to think for a moment. When was the last time you had time to simply sit and reflect, to think deeply, to pray, to dream about the life you are truly called to live? When was the last time you just rested without feeling guilty about it, without feeling that you needed to be available to someone else? If you are constantly available to everyone, you will never find that peace. You will never experience that clarity. You will never understand what God truly desires from you because you're too caught up in the immediate demands of others. There's something incredibly dangerous about being constantly accessible. It's not just a matter of losing time, it's a matter of losing purpose. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't align with your calling, you are saying no to the life you were meant to live. And over time, this becomes a way of life. You start to see yourself as a servant to everyone else's needs, rather than a steward of your own time, your own energy, your own gifts. That's not the life you were meant to lead. You were created with a purpose. You were called to something far greater than just meeting the endless demands of others. But when you are always available, always rushing to please, always saying yes, you miss out on the opportunity to live that purpose. We all have limited time. Every day, every hour is precious, and when we waste it, when we pour it out endlessly into the lives of people who may not even appreciate it, we not only lose our sense of self, but we also fail to honor the time God has given us. The very time that He entrusted to us to fulfill a greater mission, a greater calling. You see, the world will demand your time, but it won't care for your soul. It will consume you, it will drain you, and it will leave you with nothing but a trail of half-hearted efforts and unfulfilled promises. Only when you begin to learn the power of saying no, and setting boundaries will you reclaim your time and your purpose. So I ask you, what are you truly giving your life to? Is it to the endless demands of others, or is it to the higher calling that God has placed on your life? What are you pouring into? Because if you keep pouring yourself out without discretion, you'll have nothing left to give where it really matters. It's time to stop being available to everyone. It's time to reclaim your time, your energy, and your focus. It's time to say no to the distractions so you can say yes to the things that truly matter. The truth is, if we do not cultivate wisdom in how we spend our time, we will become slaves to the endless demands of those around us. The call for us to be wise stewards of our lives isn't a suggestion, it's a command. Life is not a series of random requests and distractions that we're obligated to entertain. It's a journey that demands intentionality, discernment, and clarity. And that starts with the hard but necessary skill of saying no. You see, saying no is not a rejection of people, it's a rejection of the chaos that comes from not discerning what truly matters. It is wisdom, not selfishness, that allows you to recognize that your time is a precious resource, not something to be frittered away or handed over at every moment's notice. I want to make it clear, exercising discernment doesn't mean you stop helping people. It doesn't mean you turn your back on those in need. But it does mean you learn to discern between what is urgent and what is important. Not everything that demands your time is worthy of your time. Not every person who asks something of you has the right to take it. Our culture teaches us that we must constantly be available, constantly be reachable, constantly be present for everyone who demands a piece of us. But let me tell you this, life doesn't work like that. The more available you are to everyone, the less available you become to what really matters. Your priorities become scattered, your energy diluted, and your focus fractured. We've all fallen into this trap at one time or another. You've been in that place where you say yes, because you don't want to disappoint, because you don't want to be seen as unhelpful or selfish. You don't want to let someone down, and so you give, and you give until there's nothing left for yourself. You allow the needs of others to dictate your schedule, your peace, and your purpose, and before you know it, you've lost yourself in the process. The call to wisdom means recognizing that not every person or situation should have access to your life. Not every need should pull you away from your purpose. We must learn to prioritize and protect what matters most, and let me tell you, what matters most is not always the loudest demand. It's not the person who is constantly calling, texting, or expecting something from you. What matters most is the quiet work, the deep relationships, the moments of stillness where you hear the voice of God calling you to live with intention. If you fail to exercise this discernment, you'll look back one day and realize that you spent your life saying yes to everything, and in doing so, you said no to everything that was truly meaningful. That's a tragic reality that many people live in, and it's one you must avoid. This is why we must resist the pressure to be everything to everyone. We must resist the temptation to be available to everyone who asks, because the world will never run out of demands, and people will never stop asking for more. But that doesn't mean you have to say yes at every time. Think about it. What do you want your life to be about? Is it about responding to every single request, to being the one who is always there for others, even if it means neglecting your own spiritual health, your emotional well-being, or your purpose? Is that the life you were meant to live, or is it about living with discernment, with purpose, and with focus on the things that matter most? Discernment is the ability to recognize the difference between what is urgent and what is truly important. And let me tell you this, most of the things that demand your attention are urgent, but not important. They're the distractions, the small fires that pop up every day, demanding your immediate attention. And if you're not careful, you'll spend your entire life putting out fires, responding to every little demand, and never getting to the things that truly matter. But wisdom, the wisdom that comes from God, calls us to a different path. It calls us to say no to the distractions and yes to what is eternal, what is lasting, and what is aligned with our true purpose. This wisdom enables us to know when to serve, when to engage, and when to withdraw. It allows us to protect our time, our energy, and our attention so that we can give our best to the things that matter most. You see, living with wisdom isn't about being cold or uncaring. It's about being faithful. It's about stewarding your time and resources with the knowledge that your life is not your own. God has entrusted you with a specific calling, a specific purpose, and in order to fulfill that purpose, you must learn to say no to things that do not align with it. And the truth is, this takes courage. It takes courage to say no when everyone else is saying yes, when the world is pushing you to meet every need, to fill every role. But in the end, it's that courage that will allow you to live a life of impact and purpose. So I challenge you today, exercise wisdom in how you use your time. Stop being available to everyone and start being available for what matters. Start living with purpose, with focus, and with a discerning heart that knows when to say yes and when to say no. There's a profound truth that we must face. To live a life of purpose, we need boundaries. Boundaries are not about shutting people out. They're about protecting the most important things in our lives: our time, our energy, and our peace. Too many of us allow the world to dictate how we live, and in doing so, we lose control over our own lives. We become slaves to every demand, every request, every need. And when that happens, we are no longer free to live with purpose. Boundaries are not selfish, they are necessary, and without them, we can't function the way we were created to. Imagine trying to run a race with no track, no lanes, no markers to guide you. That's what life looks like without boundaries: chaos, confusion, and distraction. Without boundaries, we cannot run the race set before us. We'll find ourselves constantly stumbling, constantly pulled in different directions, constantly off course. When we fail to set boundaries, we allow others to define our time and energy. We let them tell us what's important, what deserves our attention, and slowly we begin to lose control. What's worse is that this lack of boundaries often leads us to neglect the things that matter most, the things that God has placed in our lives for a reason. We get so caught up in the demands of others that we forget to tend to our own souls, our own calling, and the relationships that truly shape us. And here's the reality: if we don't set boundaries, others will set them for us. You see, when you're constantly available to everyone, when you don't protect your time, you're telling the world that you have nothing more important than responding to every request. People will continue to push for more because they know you'll give it. They will continue to ask because they see that there are no limits. You become a resource, not a person with a unique calling and a limited supply of time. Now, boundaries don't mean we should never help others, never be available when there's a real need. But what it does mean is that we are intentional about when and how we help. We stop saying yes out of guilt or obligation. We stop allowing others to dictate our schedule. Instead, we begin to ask the important question: does this align with my purpose? Does this request fit within the life that I'm called to live? If not, then it's okay to say no. The danger of failing to set boundaries is that, over time, we begin to lose our own sense of self. We begin to live for others, but in doing so, we become disconnected from what truly matters. Without boundaries, we give away pieces of ourselves, and over time, those pieces are gone. We're left feeling empty, drained, and disconnected from our true purpose. You've probably experienced this. You've said yes to everything, and after a while you look around and realize that you've neglected your own needs. Maybe you've sacrificed time with your family, time with God, time for rest, all to meet the never-ending demands of others. You've given so much that there's nothing left for yourself, nothing left for the people who truly matter, and nothing left for the work that God has called you to do. But it doesn't have to be this way. Setting boundaries doesn't mean that you stop caring or that you stop helping. It means that you start living with a greater sense of purpose, with a clear understanding of what matters most. Boundaries give us the space we need to focus on what God has called us to. They allow us to pour into the right things and the right people without losing ourselves in the process. Boundaries allow us to protect our time, energy, and peace. They allow us to say yes to the things that align with our purpose and no to the things that don't. They give us the strength to say, I cannot do everything, I must prioritize. When we live within the framework of boundaries, we are able to give our best to the things that matter most, rather than spreading ourselves thin and giving our worst to everything. You see, boundaries also give us the gift of rest. They allow us to step back, to breathe, to recharge. Without boundaries, we are constantly on the go, constantly moving, constantly doing. But rest is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's in the moments of stillness and reflection that we hear the voice of God, that we remember who we are, and that we're reminded of the greater purpose for which we were created. Setting boundaries also honors the people around us. When we say no to certain things, we're not rejecting them, we're protecting our ability to love them well. We're ensuring that we can be present for the people who truly matter, rather than being so scattered that we have nothing left to give. So I ask you, how are you living right now? Are you setting boundaries in your life, or are you allowing others to control your time and energy? Are you protecting your purpose, your relationships, and your peace, or are you losing yourself in the chaos of endless demands? It's time to recognize the power of boundaries. It's time to start living with intention, with focus, and with the strength to say no to the distractions and yes to the life that God has called you to. Only then will you begin to live fully in the purpose He has laid before you. The reality is, there's something deeply deceptive at play in our culture today, a lie that many of us fall prey to without even realizing it. We live in a world that constantly pushes us to please others, to meet their expectations, to be the person they want us to be. And somewhere along the way, we begin to believe that our value is found in what others think of us, in how much we can give, how much we can sacrifice for others, and how readily we are available when someone asks for our help. We begin to believe that if we say no to someone, if we don't show up when they want us to, if we aren't constantly available, then we are somehow failing them. The fear of disappointing others becomes so overwhelming that we lose sight of what really matters: our own values, our purpose, and most importantly, the person we are created to be. We start living not for our own convictions, but for the approval of those around us. But let me tell you this, when we begin living to please others, when we allow the expectations of others to dictate our choices, we are worshipping a false idol. Pleasing is not just a habit or a personality trait, it is idolatry. It's the worship of the approval and acceptance of others at the expense of our own integrity, our own peace, and our own calling. Think about it. How often do we find ourselves agreeing to things simply because we don't want to be seen as selfish or unkind? We don't want to disappoint, we don't want to let anyone down, and so we stretch ourselves thin, saying yes to every request that comes our way, even when it goes against our better judgment, even when it pulls us away from our true priorities. We begin to neglect our own spiritual life, our own growth, and even the relationships that matter most, all in the name of keeping others happy. And in doing so, we start to lose our sense of self. The problem with people Pleasing is that it doesn't lead to fulfillment, it leads to exhaustion. It doesn't lead to peace, it leads to anxiety. The more we try to live for others' approval, the less we feel like we're living our own lives, and it's in this cycle of trying to meet the needs of everyone around us that we forget to meet our own needs. We forget that we are not here to be slaves to the expectations of others. We are here to fulfill a purpose that is much higher, much greater than simply pleasing people. But here's the truth you need to hear. You are not called to be a doormat. You are not called to be constantly available, constantly at the beck and call of others. You are called to live with intention, with purpose, and with discernment, and that means sometimes you have to disappoint people. Sometimes you have to say no. The fear of disappointing others is a powerful force, but it is also a force that keeps us trapped in a cycle of unfulfilled living. When we live to please others, we live for their approval, and when their approval becomes the driving force behind our decisions, we start to lose sight of what truly matters. Our time, our energy, our focus, all become centered around fulfilling the demands of others. And in doing so, we neglect the things that God has placed in our lives that truly matter, people. Pleasing keeps us distracted, keeps us chasing after approval that can never satisfy, that can never fill the emptiness that only comes from knowing and fulfilling our true purpose. The more we try to please others, the more we end up losing ourselves. The more we give in to the endless demands of the world, the more we neglect the calling on our lives. And the tragic thing is, when we spend our time trying to please others, we often end up doing a disservice to those very people because we don't give them our best. When you are stretched too thin, when you are constantly on the go, when you are constantly available but emotionally and mentally drained, you are not serving anyone well. You're not serving the people around you, and you're certainly not serving yourself. Your true value is not in what you can do for others. Your value is in who you are, in the unique calling and purpose that God has placed in your life. We must understand that the fear of man is a trap. It's a snare that keeps us bound in a life of endless demands, a life of compromise, a life where we say yes to everything and in doing so say no to everything that truly matters. But when we learn to live in the freedom of saying no, we reclaim our time, our purpose, and our peace. We begin to live not for the approval of others, but for the purpose that God has uniquely designed for us, people. Pleasing will always keep you chasing after something that is never fully satisfied. You can never please everyone, no matter how hard you try. But when you stop living for the approval of others, when you stop seeking validation in the eyes of the world, you start living with intention, with peace, and with a sense of purpose that only comes from knowing you are fulfilling the calling on your life. You are not here to live for the approval of man. You are here to fulfill the purpose God has given you, and that requires saying no when you need to, prioritizing what truly matters, and learning to live free from the chains of people pleasing. It's time to let go of the fear of disappointing others and start living the life you were meant to live. I want you to consider something for a moment. How often do you feel overwhelmed, like your life is just a series of obligations and demands that you can't seem to escape? You feel like you're constantly running on empty, like there's no time for the things that truly matter and no energy left for the things that bring you life. This is the trap of constant availability, and it's a trap that many of us fall into without even realizing it. The truth is, when you are always available to everyone, you are giving away your time, your energy, and your focus to things and people that may not be aligned with your true purpose. You end up spreading yourself so thin that you can't give your best to anything. And in the process, you forget what it means to live with intention, to prioritize what matters most. Now, I'm not saying we should live in isolation. We are called to be in relationship with others, to serve and love those around us. But if we are constantly available, constantly saying yes to every demand, we will never have the time or energy to devote ourselves to the things that are most important. And over time, we'll find ourselves living in a state of burnout and frustration, disconnected from the purpose we were created for. When we talk about being available to everyone, What we're really talking about is giving up our autonomy. We allow the demands of the world to dictate our time, and in doing so, we lose the ability to live with purpose. We lose the ability to choose what we focus on, what we give our energy to, and what we prioritize. We become so caught up in other people's needs that we neglect our own, and in doing so, we miss the opportunity to live a life of true fulfillment. Think about how often you've said yes to something simply because you didn't want to disappoint someone, or because you were afraid of being seen as unhelpful or selfish. It's easy to fall into this trap. We want to be liked, we want to be seen as good people, as reliable, as helpful. But the truth is, constantly saying yes to everything is not only unsustainable, it's also unwise. You can't give your best to everything, and in trying to do so, you end up giving less than your best to everyone. Living with intention means understanding that not every demand on your time is worthy of your attention. It means recognizing that your time is valuable and you must steward it wisely. You cannot be everything to everyone, and trying to do so only leads to exhaustion and frustration. In fact, living this way often leads to resentment, not just of others but of yourself. You become frustrated with your inability to meet everyone's needs, and in the process you lose sight of your own. This is why we must learn the power of saying no. Saying no is not a rejection of people. It's a recognition that you cannot serve everyone, and you must choose where to focus your time and energy. It's about discerning what truly matters and what doesn't. It's about setting boundaries so that you can give your best to the things that align with your purpose and calling. The reason so many of us feel overwhelmed is because we're constantly jumping from one thing to the next without any time to reflect, to recharge, or to connect with what truly matters. When you are always available, you don't have the space to think, to process, to pray, or to simply be. You don't have the mental or emotional capacity to give your best to anything because you're spread so thin, and that's why saying no is so essential. It's a way of creating space for the things that matter most: your family, your faith, your health, and your purpose. It's about reclaiming your time and your focus so that you can live a life of intention, not obligation. I want you to think about your life right now. Are you living with intention, or are you simply reacting to the demands of others? Are you giving your best to the things that matter most, or are you just trying to keep up with everything that's coming at you? If you find yourself constantly feeling overwhelmed, it's a sign that you need to start saying no more often. You need to start protecting your time, your energy, and your focus. This doesn't mean you stop serving others or being there for people. It means you start doing so in a way that is sustainable, that doesn't drain you, and that allows you to give your best where it truly counts. It means you recognize that your time is a gift, and you must steward it wisely. The truth is, you can't do it all, and you don't need to. Trying to do so will only leave you empty and frustrated. Living with intention also means having the courage to say no to things that may seem urgent but are ultimately not important. It means taking the time to reflect on what matters most and making sure that your time is being spent on those things. It means not allowing the demands of others to pull you away from your own calling. When you say no to the distractions, you say yes to the things that will bring lasting fulfillment and purpose. So today, I challenge you, stop being available to everyone. Stop giving away your time and energy to things that don't align with your purpose. Start living with intention. Start making time for the things that truly matter. Only then will you find the peace and fulfillment that comes from living a life of purpose, not obligation. The hardest part of saying no is the guilt that often follows. We live in a world that conditions us to feel bad when we don't respond to every request, when we don't drop everything to meet someone else's needs. There's a pervasive pressure to always be available, to always be accommodating, to never disappoint anyone. And let me tell you, this is a weight that many of us carry, a burden we've accepted without even questioning why. The truth is, this guilt doesn't come from a place of love or compassion. It comes from a distorted understanding of what it means to serve others. We have been led to believe that our worth is tied to how much we can give, how many people we can help, how available we are. We equate saying no with being selfish, with letting others down, with not being the person we think we should be. But this mindset is not only unbiblical, it's unhealthy and unsustainable. If we continue to live under the constant pressure to be everything for everyone, we will burn out, we will lose ourselves, and we will miss out on the true fulfillment that comes from living with purpose. That's the danger of constantly feeling guilty when we set boundaries. We end up living our lives in a way that is dictated by guilt, by the fear of disappointing others, rather than by our own values, priorities, and purpose. Guilt is often the voice that convinces us we must do it all, that we must be everything to everyone. But if we let guilt govern our decisions, we allow our time and energy to be stolen, and we give up the freedom to live the life we were created to live. The real challenge is learning to recognize that guilt for what it is, a manipulative emotion that seeks to control you by making you feel obligated to meet every demand. And when you begin to understand this, you'll realize that you don't need to carry that guilt anymore. The key to breaking free from this guilt is understanding that setting boundaries is not a rejection of people. It is an act of wisdom and love. Saying no when you need to is not about being selfish or unkind. It's about recognizing that your energy and time are finite resources and you must use them wisely. When you say no to something that doesn't align with your purpose, you are saying yes to something that is more aligned with what God has called you to do. You are protecting the time and energy you need to fulfill the greater calling on your life. Saying no also allows you to invest more deeply in the things that truly matter, the relationships that build you up, the work that strengthens your calling, the time you need to rest and recharge. Without this balance, we end up giving so much of ourselves to things that drain us that we don't have anything left to give to the things that matter. And that's not just detrimental to us, it's detrimental to everyone around us. I know the guilt feels real. I know it's hard to say no when someone asks for your help or when there's a need that seems urgent. But what you need to understand is that you are not helping anyone by running yourself ragged. You are not fulfilling your true calling by trying to please everyone, and you are not serving others by constantly sacrificing your own peace, energy, and health. In fact, you are doing a disservice to the very people you are trying to help. When you live in constant guilt and respond to every request out of obligation, you become less effective, less joyful, and less capable of truly helping others. You are running on empty, and you have nothing left to give. But when you set boundaries, when you learn to say no, you begin to operate from a place of strength, peace, and focus. You begin to give your best, not your leftovers, and that's when you truly begin to make a difference. This is the irony of guilt-driven living. The more you try to please others by saying yes to everything, the less you are actually able to serve. It's when you begin to prioritize, when you begin to say no to the good things so that you can say yes to the best things, that you truly find fulfillment and peace. Let me be clear, saying no is not always easy. It's not always popular. It might even cause temporary tension in your relationships. But the truth is, if you want to live a life of purpose, if you want to honor your calling, if you want to be the best version of yourself, then you must learn to say no without guilt. You must learn to recognize that your worth is not in how much you give to others, but in how you steward the gifts, time, and energy that God has given you. Guilt is not your master. It doesn't control you unless you let it. When you stand firm in your boundaries, when you refuse to let guilt manipulate you into saying yes when you should say no, you reclaim your time, your peace, and your purpose. And it's in that space that you will find true freedom, not just for yourself, but also for those you are meant to serve. So I encourage you today, let go of the guilt. Let go of the fear of disappointing others. Live with purpose, with focus, and with the strength to say no when necessary. You are not here to be available to everyone. You are here to fulfill the calling that has been placed on your life, and that requires boundaries, boundaries that protect your time, your energy, and your peace.